The first cramp hit me like a dull thud low in my belly. It was 6 a.m. and the pre-dawn light was just beginning to filter through our cheap apartment blinds, casting gray stripes across the worn comforter. I groaned and rolled over, pressing a hand to my abdomen. My husband, Mark, didn't stir. He'd been working late again, taking on freelance coding gigs at all hours to try and keep us afloat, his exhausted breathing a steady, rhythmic counterpoint to the chaos stirring inside me. I didn't have the heart to wake him. Besides, I knew this feeling, or at least I thought I did. It was that familiar, twisting discomfort I'd come to dread over the years. Just colic, I told myself, a mantra of denial. Or maybe it was a bad reaction to the spicy tacos we'd splurged on for dinner, a rare treat that now felt like a foolish indulgence. My stomach had always been my weak point, a traitorous organ that rebelled at the slightest provocation. Being 7 months pregnant certainly wasn't helping things, turning my insides into a cramped and unpredictable war zone where every rumble and pang felt magnified. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the pain to subside, completely oblivious to the fact that this was not a stomach ache. This was the opening salvo of a battle I didn't know I was about to fight. This was the beginning of the end of my world as I knew it, and the start of a story I never imagined I'd live to tell. In less than 2 hours I would be on my bathroom floor holding my own child, born into a world of chaos and fear, delivered by my own trembling hands. Life has a way of kicking you when you're down, and for the better part of a year, it felt like Mark and I were perpetually on the mat. This pregnancy hadn't been planned. It was a tiny, miraculous, and frankly terrifying surprise that had announced itself in the middle of the biggest financial storm of our lives. Mark had been laid off from his stable software engineering job 6 months prior, a casualty of a massive corporate restructuring that had vaporized his career overnight. The severance package, which had seemed so substantial at first, had evaporated faster than morning fog, swallowed by rent on our cramped one-bedroom apartment, car payments, and the growing pile of bills that seemed to multiply on our kitchen counter with a malevolent life of their own. He was trying, I knew he was. I'd watch him for hours, his handsome face, once so quick to smile, now perpetually etched with worry and illuminated by the blue glow of his laptop. He'd hunch over his keyboard, chasing down freelance projects that paid a fraction of his old salary and demanded twice the hours. But the stress was a corrosive acid, eating away at the easy affection and playful banter we once shared. Our conversations became clipped and transactional, focused on budgets, job applications, and the ever-dwindling number in our checking account. The laughter that used to fill our small apartment, the sound that had made me fall in love with him, had been replaced by a heavy, anxious silence that felt louder than any argument. Some nights, I'd wake up to find him staring at the ceiling, the weight of his perceived failure pressing down on him so hard I thought it might suffocate us both. I was still working my remote customer service job, my swollen ankles propped up on a pillow under the makeshift desk I'd wedged into a corner of our living room. I'd spend my days fielding calls from angry customers, my voice a mask of professional calm while my own world felt like it was crumbling. But my income was a bandage on a gaping wound. We were drowning, and the impending arrival of a baby felt less like a joyful milestone and more like an anchor pulling us deeper into the abyss. We hadn't bought a single thing for the baby. No crib stood waiting in the corner. There was no car seat, no mobile, no tiny, neatly folded onesies. My baby shower had been a quiet, strained affair with a few friends who tried their best to be cheerful, but everyone could see the fear in my eyes behind my forced smile. How were we supposed to bring a child into this mess? The question haunted my every waking moment and populated my dreams with anxious, shadowy figures. So, when the cramps started that morning, they felt like just another symptom of our chaotic, stressful life. They were a perfect metaphor for my existence. A constant, low-grade misery punctuated by sharp, unpredictable stabs of panic. I'd seen a doctor about these pains long before I was pregnant. After a battery of invasive and embarrassing tests, the diagnosis was a clinical shrug and a label. Irritable bowel syndrome. Stress is a major trigger, the gastroenterologist had said, handing me a pamphlet on dietary fiber and meditation as if that could solve the gnawing anxiety of potential eviction. So now, whenever the pain flared up, I'd blame stress and whatever I'd eaten the day before. It was my body's broken alarm system, always ringing for the wrong reasons, and I had learned to ignore it. I managed to drag myself out of bed, careful not to disturb Mark, and tiptoed into the kitchen. I looked back at his exhausted form, the dark circles under his eyes stark against his pale skin, and my heart ached with a confusing mixture of profound love and simmering resentment. I felt so alone in this pregnancy. He was physically present, but his mind was 1,000 miles away, lost in a sea of financial worry. He hadn't come to the last 2 prenatal appointments. "I have a deadline, honey, I can't get away," he'd said, his eyes glued to his screen. I'd sat alone in the waiting room, surrounded by beaming couples holding hands and comparing ultrasound photos, and felt a profound, isolating shame that made me want to disappear. I forced down a piece of dry toast and a glass of water, hoping to settle my rebellious gut. The pain subsided for a moment, a fleeting truce that gave me a sliver of false hope. Then it returned with a vengeance. It wasn't just a cramp anymore. It was a physical presence wrapping around my back and squeezing my entire torso like a giant vice. I leaned against the counter, breathing through it, my knuckles turning white as I gripped the cold laminate. This is a bad one, I thought. I decided a hot bath might help, a trick that usually eased the muscular tension of my worst IBS flare-ups. As the tub filled, the sound of the rushing water loud in the morning stillness, I caught my reflection in the steamy mirror. My face was pale and drawn, my eyes wide with a pain that was quickly eclipsing my exhaustion. My belly was a perfect taut drum, and I instinctively placed my hands on it, feeling for the familiar flutter of movement. Nothing. A cold spike of pure fear lanced through me, sharper and more terrifying than the physical pain. Usually the baby was a tiny acrobat, especially in the mornings, as if my waking stirred them too. The stillness was deeply, fundamentally wrong. "Hey in there," I whispered, my voice trembling in the small enclosed space. "Wake up. Please just give mommy a kick." The silence was my only answer, and it screamed at me. I sank into the hot water, the heat a temporary blessing, a deceptive comfort against my aching back. For a few glorious minutes, the pain seemed to soften at the edges, its sharp teeth dulled by the warmth. I leaned my head back against the porcelain, closing my eyes and allowing myself a fragile moment of hope. A voice in my head whispered soothingly, "It's just a bad flare-up. The bath is helping. Everything is fine." I clung to that thought like a life raft. If everything was fine, then the baby was fine. The unnerving stillness in my womb was just a coincidence, a deep sleep. He or she was just resting, blissfully unaware of my internal turmoil. I tried to regulate my breathing to send calm, loving energy to the child I was so terrified of failing. But the truce was short-lived. The pain returned, and this time it was different. It wasn't the constant churning ache I was used to. It was organized. It had a structure, a terrifying and undeniable rhythm. It was a wave. It would begin deep in my back, a gathering force that slowly radiated around to my front, tightening its grip on my entire torso until my belly felt as hard as a bowling ball. It would build and build and build to a peak of unbearable intensity, a silent internal scream that held me in its grip for what felt like an eternity. And then, just as I thought I would break apart, it would slowly recede, leaving me trembling and breathless in its wake, the water in the tub sloshing with my shudders. A minute or two of blessed, empty peace would follow. And then I would feel it starting all over again. The slow gathering, the inexorable tightening. A forgotten piece of information from our one and only birthing class surfaced in my panicked mind. The cheerful instructor, a woman named Linda, had projected a slide on the wall. The 5-1-1 rule. Contractions that are 5 minutes apart last for 1 minute for at least 1 hour. It was a rule for going to the hospital. A rule for full-term babies. A rule that had absolutely nothing to do with me here at 31 weeks trying to convince myself I had indigestion. I tried to time them, my brain foggy with pain. I watched the second hand on my phone screen propped on the toilet lid. The wave crested and held me for nearly a full minute. The peace that followed lasted less than 5. It was close. Too close. Oh, it's a coincidence. Denial is a powerful anesthetic, and I was injecting it directly into my veins. The alternative was too monstrous to contemplate. I was in preterm labor, alone in a bathroom with a husband who thought I'd eaten a bad taco. The baby was too small. The lungs weren't ready. The litany of horrors from the preterm birth pamphlet they'd given me at the doctor's office flashed through my mind. The hot water was no longer a comfort. It felt like a trap. I had to get out. I got out of the tub, my movements clumsy and slow, the pain now so severe I had to grip the towel rack to stay upright as another wave hit. I stumbled back into the bedroom, dripping water onto the worn carpet. The gray morning light now filled the room, making everything look stark and unforgiving. "Mark," I said, my voice barely a whisper, hoarse from holding back screams. "Mark, I think something's wrong." He sat up, rubbing his eyes, his expression a familiar mask of groggy annoyance. "What is it, Sarah? It's not even 7. "The pain," I gasped, leaning against the doorframe as the vice around my abdomen tightened again. "It's really bad. It's not stopping. It's coming in waves." He sighed, a sound that grated on my raw nerves like sandpaper. "Did you take a Tums? I told you those tacos were a bad idea. You know how your stomach is." His words, meant to be practical, landed like physical blows. He wasn't seeing me. He wasn't hearing the terror threaded through my voice. All he could hear was the same old story of my faulty digestive system. Tears of frustration, fear, and profound loneliness welled in my eyes. He was right here, 2 feet away, but I had never felt so alone. "It's not my stomach, Mark," I cried, my voice gaining a hard, desperate edge. "It feels different. It's in my back and it's happening over and over." Okay, he said, swinging his legs out of bed. He still wasn't getting it. He was moving in slow motion, operating in a different reality where this was a minor inconvenience that could be solved with a chalky pink liquid. "Let me get you some Pepto. Just try to lie down and rest for a bit." "No," I shouted, the word torn from my lungs. As if on cue, an enormous contraction seized me, stealing my breath and buckling my knees. I cried out, a raw, involuntary sound of pure agony that was half scream, half sob. That finally broke through his fog. The annoyance in his eyes was instantly vaporized, replaced by a wide-eyed, dawning horror. He saw me. Finally, he saw me, doubled over, clutching my belly, my face a mask of terror. "Oh my God, Sarah," he stammered, his own face losing all its color. Do you think it's—" "I don't know," I sobbed, the words tumbling out between ragged breaths. "I'm scared. The baby isn't moving. And this hurts so much, Mark. It hurts." That galvanized him into action. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. Hey, we'll go to the hospital. Right now. Let's get you dressed. I'll call the doctor on the way." He was trying to take control, to fix it, but it was too late. The situation was moving faster than we were. Even as he spoke, I felt a sudden, strange, and terrifying shift deep inside my body. The squeezing pressure was gone, replaced by something new. A deep, primal downward bearing in my pelvis. It was an overwhelming, involuntary urge to bear down. An instinct my conscious mind couldn't comprehend or control. "I can't," I choked out, a new wave of sheer animal terror washing over me. "Mark, I can't go anywhere. But I have to push." "Push." His voice cracked, high with disbelief and fear. "Push what? Sarah, what are you talking about? We have to get you to the car." "The baby, Mark. I think the baby is coming. Right now." I didn't wait for his response. I couldn't have. My body was in command. I turned and fled, not towards the front door and the promise of help, but back to the one place my body was screaming for me to go. The bathroom. I stumbled inside and slammed the door, my hand automatically fumbling for the lock and clicking it into place. It wasn't a conscious desire to shut him out. It was a place of pure animal instinct. I needed a small, safe space. A den. My mind was no longer in control. My body had taken over, and it was about to perform the most terrifying and miraculous act of my life. The cool tile of the bathroom floor was a shock against my feverish skin as I collapsed onto my hands and knees. The room was spinning, a tiny, sterile box of white tile and chrome fixtures that was about to become the most sacred and terrifying place on earth. I could hear Mark on the other side of the door, his voice a frantic, muffled roar. Sarah, open the door. For God's sake, what's happening? We have to go to the hospital." His panic was a live wire, and it connected directly with my own, amplifying it 100-fold. I couldn't answer him. I couldn't form words. My entire being, my entire universe, had shrunk to the size of this small room and the Herculean effort my body was undertaking without my permission. The pressure in my pelvis was immense, a feeling so intense and alien I was certain I was being split in two from the inside out. This couldn't be happening. Not here on a dirty bath mat. Not now, 2 months too early. There were no doctors in sterile blue scrubs, no nurses with kind, encouraging smiles, no gleaming silver instruments on a tray. There was just me, the beige bath mat I'd bought on sale at Target, and a fear so profound it felt like a living entity in the room with me, its cold breath on my neck. And then with the next soul-shattering contraction, I felt a gush of warm fluid, a pop and a release that soaked my legs and the towels beneath me. My water had broken. The last, flimsy vestiges of denial were washed away in that flood. This was real. This was happening. My baby was coming and I was utterly, terrifyingly alone. A scream tore from my throat, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. It was primal, stripped of all civility and language, a sound from the dawn of time. It was the sound of a creature in the deepest throes of pain and fear. On the other side of the door, Mark's pounding became more frantic, the wood shuddering in its frame. Then his voice changed. It was still terrified, but it was clearer, directed not at me but at someone else. Yes. 911. My wife is pregnant, she's 31 weeks and she's locked in the bathroom. I think she's giving birth. Please, you have to send someone. Hearing his voice, hearing those words, 911, was like a tiny pinprick of light in an endless black cavern. Help was coming. But the 911 dispatcher wasn't in this room. The paramedics weren't here now. It was still just me. The urge to push was no longer an urge. It was a biological command, an unstoppable force of nature that took hold of my muscles and bore down. I braced my hands against the base of the toilet, my body arching, acting on an ancient cellular wisdom I never knew I possessed. Tears streamed down my face, mingling with sweat dripping onto the floor. I begged. I pleaded with a God I wasn't even sure I believed in. Please no. Please let my baby be okay. Please don't take my baby from me. It's too soon. I'm not ready. Every fear I'd harbored for the past 7 months, about money, about our fractured marriage, about my own crushing inadequacy as a future mother, coalesced into one single blinding terror, that I would fail my child in the first and most important moment of their life. My body pushed again, harder this time. Curiosity and terror warred within me. I had to know what was happening. I reached down between my legs, my trembling fingers needing to understand the geography of this new, terrifying world. And then I felt it. A small, firm, hair-covered mound. My baby's head. The sight of my own reflection in the chrome faucet was horrifying. My face was a twisted mask of agony, my hair plastered to my forehead with sweat, my eyes wild with a terror I had never known. But in that moment, seeing myself, something shifted. The terror was still there, a roaring fire in my chest, but another feeling rose up to meet it, a fierce, protective instinct that was somehow even stronger. My baby was halfway between two worlds. My baby needed me to be brave. My baby needed me to finish this. Panic was a luxury I could no longer afford. Okay, I whispered to myself, the word a ragged puff of air against the sounds of my own panting. Okay, we can do this. You and me, little one. We can do this. Outside, I could hear Mark's voice again, relaying information from the dispatcher. She says you need to breathe, Sarah. She says to pant. Don't push so hard. Try to pant like a dog. His voice was my anchor. He was out there fighting to get help to me, and it gave me a sliver of strength. I tried to do as he said, taking short, shallow breaths, but my body had its own agenda. The next contraction was the one. It was a tsunami of force, lifting me, consuming me, bigger and more powerful than anything that had come before. I gave into it completely, roaring, pushing with every ounce of strength I had, every bit of fear and love and desperation I possessed. There was a searing, burning pain, a sensation of stretching beyond all possible limits, a moment I was sure I was ripping into, and then, a release. A sudden, unbelievable, sliding relief. I slumped forward, panting, my arms shaking so badly they could barely hold me up. It took me a moment to understand what had happened. I looked down, and there on the soft pile of the bath mat was a baby. My baby. Impossibly small, a shocking shade of blue-gray and covered in a waxy white coating, but perfect. So perfect. A whole, complete person. For a heart-stopping second, maybe two, there was utter silence in the room, save for my own ragged breathing. The baby didn't move. It didn't cry. Oh no. The single word pulsed in my brain, a drumbeat of pure horror. The previous fear was nothing compared to this. This was a nightmare from which there was no waking. Adrenaline, cold and sharp, surged through me. I remembered something else from that birthing class, a video of a newborn taking its first breath. You had to clear their airway. He had to stimulate them. With hands that shook so violently I could barely control them, I scooped up the tiny, slippery body. I could see in that moment he was so light he felt like a bird in my hands. I cradled him against my chest, his skin shockingly warm against mine, and fumbled to wipe his mouth and nose with the edge of a clean hand towel. I rubbed his back vigorously, my movements clumsy and desperate. "Come on, baby," I whispered, my voice thick with tears, a desperate guttural prayer. "Come on, breathe for me. Cry for me. Please, baby, please cry." I turned him over, trying to support his head like they showed in the videos, and gently patted his back. Nothing. The silence in that bathroom was the loudest, most terrifying sound I had ever heard. This was it. This was my failure, manifested in a tiny, silent, perfect form. I had failed. And then, just as I was about to dissolve into a fresh wave of despair that would have surely swallowed me whole, he gave a tiny, sputtering cough. A little gurgle. It was followed by a weak, mewling cry like a kitten, that quickly crescendoed into a full-throated, furious, life-affirming wail. It was the most beautiful sound in the universe. The relief was so total, so absolute, that it knocked the air out of my lungs and I fell back against the cold porcelain of the bathtub. I pulled my son onto my chest, wrapping us both in the first clean towel I could reach, my body shaking uncontrollably. I sobbed deep, shuddering cries of terror and joy and disbelief and gratitude. He was here. He was alive. He was so small, but he was breathing. He was crying. He was real. Just then, a splintering crash echoed through the apartment. Mark had kicked the door in. The lock gave way and the door flew open, slamming against the wall. He burst into the small room, his face ashen, the 911 dispatcher still squawking tinny instructions from the phone in his hand. He stopped dead in the doorway, his eyes taking in the scene. Me on the floor, covered in sweat and tears and blood, a tableau of primal chaos, holding our tiny, screaming son against my skin. The fear on his face melted away, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated awe. He dropped to his knees in front of me, his own tears starting to fall thick and fast. He didn't say a word. He just reached out a trembling hand and gently, so gently, touched our baby's head. In that moment we weren't a couple drowning in debt and stress. We were a family, forged in the crucible of a tiled bathroom floor. We were survivors. The arrival of the paramedics was a whirlwind of calm, professional competence in the midst of our beautiful, raw chaos. They moved with a quiet urgency, their voices soothing as they deftly cut the cord, checked me over, and wrapped my son in a special thermal blanket. One of them, a kind-faced woman with warm, steady eyes, looked directly at me as she took my blood pressure. "You did an amazing job, Mom," she said, her voice full of genuine admiration. "You were incredibly brave." Hearing those words, feeling that validation from a stranger who had walked into the aftermath of my terror, I felt a swell of pride I'd never experienced before. I hadn't just been a victim of a terrifying circumstance. I had been an active participant. I had delivered my son. My body, which I had so often felt betrayed by, had performed a miracle. The ride to the hospital was surreal. I lay on the gurney, my tiny son, now nestled in a portable incubator beside me, his little fists clenched. Mark held my hand the entire way, his grip tight and unwavering as if he was afraid I might disappear. He kept looking from me to our son and back again, his eyes shining with a new light, a mixture of awe and a deep, profound respect that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. The wall that stress and fear had built between us, brick by painful brick over the last year, had been obliterated by the raw, undeniable miracle we had just shared. Our son, who we decided to name Noah right there in the ambulance, weighed only 4 pounds, 3 ounces. He was immediately whisked away to the neonatal intensive care unit, the NICU. The next few weeks were a painful blur of beeping machines, the constant smell of antiseptic and whispered conversations with doctors and nurses in the hushed, sacred halls of the NICU. It was agonizing to see him in that little plastic box, a tiny human being hooked up to a constellation of wires and tubes. I could only touch him through holes in the side of the incubator. But every day he grew stronger. We'd watch him for hours, marveling as he gripped our fingers, his tiny hand barely wrapping around the tip. He was a fighter. He had to be. He'd entered the world in the most challenging way imaginable. During those long days and even longer nights spent in uncomfortable hospital chairs, Mark never left my side. We talked. We really, truly talked for the first time in months. We didn't talk about bills or job applications. We talked about our fears, our hopes, our son. He held my hand as I cried from the dizzying hormonal crash and sheer exhaustion. He admitted how lost he'd been, how his fear of failing us had caused him to pull away, to hide inside himself where he thought he couldn't hurt us more. When I broke down that door, Sarah, he told me one night, his voice thick with emotion as we looked at Noah through the plastic, and I saw you there on the floor. You looked like a warrior. You were so strong, so powerful, holding our son. It was like a lightning bolt to my soul. It woke me up. I realized I hadn't been fighting for the right things. I was so obsessed with the money we'd lost, the life we used to have, that I forgot about the treasure I already had right in front of me. That was the true turning point. Noah's dramatic birth hadn't just been a medical emergency. It was an emotional reset button for our entire lives. Our old problems didn't magically disappear. The bills were still waiting for us. Mark still needed to find a stable job. But our perspective had been fundamentally, seismically altered. We had faced the worst-case scenario, the most terrifying moment of our lives, and we had not only survived, we had triumphed. What was a credit card bill compared to holding your living, breathing child in your arms after delivering him on a bath mat? After 3 long, arduous weeks, the day finally came when we got to bring Noah home. Walking back into our apartment, carrying our son in a brand new car seat, felt like stepping into a different dimension. The same space where so much fear and pain had unfolded now felt different, consecrated. The bathroom door was still splintered near the knob from where Mark had forced it open. We decided not to fix it right away. It was a scar, a reminder. Not of the trauma, but of the strength we found in the midst of it. It was the door he broke down to get to us, the moment he chose to show up, not just as a provider but as a partner and a father in the truest sense of the word. Holding my son in the quiet of our living room, listening to his tiny, snuffly breaths, I finally felt the weight I had been carrying for so long begin to lift. The constant anxiety that had been my unwelcome companion for nearly a year had been replaced by a quiet, fierce confidence. I had done the impossible. I had faced the ultimate fear and discovered a strength within myself I never knew existed. I was a mother. Life is still a challenge, but it's a challenge we face together now as a united team. A few weeks after we brought Noah home, Mark found a new job. It wasn't as high-paying as his last one, but it was stable, and it allowed him to be home for dinner every night, to be present for bath time, to be the father he so desperately wanted to be. We look at Noah, our little miracle baby, our bathroom baby, and we know that we can handle anything. He is our constant, beautiful reminder that the most terrifying moments can lead to the most profound beauty, and that sometimes, the greatest strength is found not in a pristine hospital, but on your own bathroom floor in the very heart of the storm. It's a reminder that even when you feel completely and utterly alone, you are capable of the most extraordinary things. My story is a testament to the incredible power we all have hidden deep inside of us, a strength that often only reveals itself in our moments of greatest crisis. It's a power that can turn terror into triumph and solitude into a story of survival. If you've ever been through a terrifying experience, a difficult birth, or a moment where you felt completely alone and had to dig deep to find a strength you didn't know you had, I see you. Your story matters and your strength is incredible. If this story resonated with you or touched your heart, please share your own experiences in the comments below. There is so much power and healing in community, in knowing we are not alone in our struggles. Don't forget to give this video a like, to help it reach others who might need to hear it. And please subscribe to the channel for more true stories of survival, hope, and the unbreakable human spirit. You are so much stronger than you know.